Hello, everyone. Mark from Avalanche here, as always. Today we are joined by the GoGoPool team to talk about the upcoming IDO, learn more about the project. We're joined by Johnny Galt, the CTO, and Stephen Gates, the CEO and founder of the project. Thanks a lot for joining us here today and giving us the time.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. This is awesome production value.
Yeah, we try our best. Yeah, it's really great to have you guys here. I want to get into the project, but maybe before I do that, I can kind of set this up a little bit. As teams and as people, we've known each other for a long time now, and really have always, as Avalanche, been super interested and bullish on what you guys are working on. I think you guys have good foresight and had good foresight about where the ecosystem was going, what it was going to need, and how you could get ahead of that and service that. And I think a lot of that is going to kind of come through in the conversation today. But all that to say, we're super excited to have this on the platform. We think it's going to be like of tremendous utility to the ecosystem and its growth. So super excited to just kind of get into it all. But before we do that, maybe each of you could just kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background and prior to GoGoPool and maybe kind of tie that into how you landed at GoGoPool and how these things are kind of synergistic.
Yeah, John, you want to take the first stab?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Mark.
Sure.
Good to be here. So I was lucky enough to kind of grow up during the personal computer revolution back in the day. So I've been programming since, I had a VIC-20 when I was a kid. We played LAN parties on actual Macintoshes, Maze Wars. So I decided that's what I wanted to do for a career. I got an engineering degree at UC San Diego and started out building like mission planning software for the B-2 stealth bomber, which I thought was going to be so exciting and cool. Turned out it was exactly the opposite of that. So I really got turned off of the big company, huge organization, cog in the wheel type thing, and really wanted to get into startups. So I started working at startups up in Silicon Valley. And that's really kind of where I found my niche, is going 0 to 1. That's really what I enjoy doing the most. So I've always kind of been interested in crypto, like from the sidelines as I've been working in Web 2 and working on my own startups, always following Bitcoin and what's going on in Bitcoin and then Ethereum. And I remember knowing about Goon, the founder of Avalanche, before he founded Avalanche, because he was very active in the Bitcoin community, just trying to really bring innovative technology to Bitcoin. And Bitcoiners just were not having it. And so I could see why he got, a little deflated there and decided to release the Team Rocket anonymous paper that described the Avalanche consensus mechanism. And when I saw that, I was hooked. I was super excited about Avalanche from the beginning. I knew this was going to be big.
Cool.
So yeah, so I was kind of doing things on the side, just playing around with technology once they finally built it. Became a validator. And I had some code I was trying to do something with, and I didn't really know what to do with it. It was a multi-signature wallet. So I went to Barcelona for the summit and just wanted to meet the community. It was basically deciding to leave Web 2 and go into crypto full time.
Yeah.
And met a ton of people. And when I finally bumped into Steve, there was definitely some magic happening at that point with what he wanted to accomplish, what I wanted to accomplish, and our values seem aligned. So we really got along great, and the whole GoGoPool was hatched at the summit last year.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, Stephen, before we move on to you, I just kind of like want to like highlight how cool I think that is that you guys met at the summit, at this event that was designed to bring together the community. And like, for anyone that's like listening, because we get a lot of people that are interested in like starting a project, founding a project. How do you kind of make all this stuff come together? And a lot of the times it's just a function of being engaged, being interested, being involved, participating, and these things can kind of materialize around you just by being present. And this is like a really good example of that. Stephen, please, what about you?
Yeah, I think mildly similar story to John, but like the different variant. So for me, I was bitten by a startup bug in the middle of college. And in college, kind of the biggest decision I had was, do I graduate early or do I drop out and do startups, or do I graduate like early and do startups? I picked the latter. And then, have been, I think, for 3, 4, 5 or so years, 5 or 6 years, been starting different startups and kind of getting things rolling on that side. I think the kind of biggest learning is know who your partners are and who the investors are. It's so important just to make sure you like the foundation of a startup is just as solid and rock solid as possible, and that everyone is kind of lined up and everyone kind of has the same goal in mind. And I think that's where going into this one, we were going into GoGoPool. This was like Q4 2 years ago, I think. If I recall correctly, it was before DFK, before Supernets, before really anything Subnet related. Like I don't even know if there's documentation for Subnets. It was maybe just like a page for it. But we were looking into adding in a Web3 component to this content creator kind of startup that we were creating for Twitch streamers. And we needed to tokenize the interest in a Twitch streamer, and especially the community's contribution to Twitch streamers. And we were thinking through like, okay, what backend do we build on? And this is when I got red pilled on subnets. We're like, okay, what backend do we build on? Well, it's definitely in crypto, maybe a DAO structure. But now how do we actually build it? Like, what's the actual infrastructure here? I looked at Cosmos, looked at Polkadot, looked at subnets. And for me, it was looking at how subnets were designed in the scope of the network and how low level and flexible subnets are. And then because of the consensus, how fast they can be and scalable as well, like just fast at scale. I was like, okay, for us, if for any team trying to create a unicorn in Web3 that needs an app chain, or even just a protocol that operates at a unicorn level of scale, like millions of transactions a month, it really seems like subnets were the only option, and they still are to a certain extent. And that's when we were like, okay, subnets, like this is how technology should actually be in blockchain, like not running auctions on Polkadot or like using this weird kind of like broken system. But it's like, okay, with subnets, this is actually pure. It's good. This can scale. This can be good. Now let's actually start using it. And that's when we were like, oh crap, there's a little rough around the edges, not much documentation at that point. We were just reading the raw code and trying to stitch together tooling ourselves. And when we realized that, oh, we're actually getting more excited about this stuff than we're about like the whole content creator stuff. Like, okay, because this is now infrastructure and we're all infra people. Like, okay, there's a really good founder market fit here, and there's a clear signal of like, oh, let's take this more seriously. And then we started, or I guess I started making a list of, all right, what are the 3 biggest problems that subnets have for widespread adoption? Because to bring subnet technology, to really bring Web3 to a much like right now, Web3 is built for thousands of people, but to bring it to millions of people per month, like really, like I really think subnet, like app chains are the only way, and I think subnets are by far, hands down, the best primitive for subnet or for app chains. And then we started making the list of, okay, what's missing here? First one is this whole problem of finding your hardware partners, and finding the AVAX, renting AVAX to actually launch your subnet. And that's what GoGoPool came about. But even like GoGoPool is just the start. Our mission is to make subnets easy, and then to make them powerful. I think there's a couple other components here at play that we'll be talking about pretty soon. But that was kind of the introduction into Avalanche, and then heard about the summit. I was like, okay, I got to go meet these people. And then that's where I met John, met Johnny. And then, I remember clearly this moment, like the last day of the summit, we both had our laptops out. I turned around, showed him what I got. He turned his around, showed me what he's got. And we're like, oh shit, like you built the one part that I can't figure out how to build, because like trying to get this whole pooling system or pooling like the staking protocol to work. And then I had the rest of it with some kind of like investors lined up, and we're like, oh, cool. Let's get to know each other.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I love that. And we have you guys here today. Like, could you give us just a kind of general picture of the rest of the team? Like, how big is it? Who are they? What are they working on, kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're a very, very engineering and info-focused team. So we have 10 people on the team right now. I think 4 of them are marketing sales oriented. 6 of them are engineers. Um, and yeah, I think one kind of key thing about us is that we're not DeFi people. I think a lot of projects got into crypto because of the Avalanche Rush and DeFi projects, and like, cool. That's definitely not us. Something to be aware of. We're definitely very much infrastructure oriented people. Of how can we help commercialize subnets and make it really, really easy to use, so that teams all over the world can just pick it up, start using. So all of our engineers are very kind of infrastructure focused, and then our sales and marketing is focused on like, okay, now how do we make this stuff really easy to use?
Okay, cool. And I actually want to come back to the sales and marketing stuff a little later, but just to kind of like reset the board here, just talk about GoGoPool and like what it is, what problem is it solving at the highest level? Like, what is the kind of elevator pitch and how does it work?
Yeah, so and John can talk about the process of how it works, but GoGoPool is a permissionless staking protocol that built for Avalanche subnets that lets anybody launch a validator node for 1,000 AVAX instead of 2,000. The whole reason behind this is the unmet need here is that there's a large demand for subnet infrastructure. I think people see the announcements, and that's really the tip of the iceberg. Like, for every one announcement that is seen on Twitter, there's 10 to 20 projects in the background who's not quite ready yet to announce what they're working on.
Right.
But all these people are gunning towards kind of releasing the subnet, and there's a lot of them. And the unmet need here is that it's really tough for them to coordinate. When I launch a subnet, every validator node of my subnet, because it's a blockchain, every validator node of my subnet also has to validate the primary network. So there's 2 questions. That comes with a 2,000 AVAX price tag for each of them, minimum. And who's going to actually run and maintain the hardware? Who's going to upgrade it? Who's going to monitor it? Who's going to loop me in when there's a problem, etc.? Who's going to help me with governance? And sourcing that AVAX and sourcing the hardware is just, there's just no way to do it right now unless you're well funded. So unless you're the most well-funded team in the world, there's just no mechanical way for you to source AVAX and for you to source the hardware to launch your subnet. And that's what GoGoPool is meant to solve initially by building a community that's very incentivized through the GGP token. Like, okay, let's use the GGP token to help pull these resources together and make it safe, trustless, permissionless, decentralized, but also orient the community in a way that makes subnets easy to use.
Right. Okay. And Johnny, before you kind of jump in here, I just think I like this. The distinction is important, right? Because it's not just, hey, you're gonna go run your own validators. You're just gonna do it for a little less, right? There's all of these efficiencies and all of this cost saving across like a number of different verticals, not just in hardware, but also in like time, basically, and speed to market, and like all of these things, really matter. You could say, you look at it and say, okay, well, there's a $1,000 AVAX, I'm sorry, 1,000 AVAX saving here. That's great, right? It's actually a lot deeper than that. And I think that like nuance is important to just kind of draw out. But Johnny, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it from like the technical perspective.
Yeah, so like this really is definitely our V1. So we're focusing on lowering the cost in AVAX. So we do that by we have a liquid staking token which we've developed, which is one of the first ERC 4626 liquid staking tokens that's going to be available. So that gives you just all the flexibility that a liquid staking token gives you. You don't have to lock up your tokens, and your rewards accrue over time. They're actually streamed. So it's a really, really solid foundation to build that token on. And then the other part of that is, you know, letting people spin up these validators for less AVAX. And so these validators are going to be able to spin up these nodes cheaper. We're going to cut the cost of that. But one thing that Ethereum kind of really demonstrated to the market was that you have 2 completely different groups of people now. You have developers who all they do is develop software. they never once have to think about where do I deploy it? How big is my server? What do I have to do with it? Where do I, none of that comes into the equation. It's like you deploy a
Mm-hmm.
contract, and Ethereum has incentivized this whole other group of people to spin up, maintain, run, operate, upgrade this entire world computer, right? So those two things are completely separate, which in Web 2, you as a developer have to think about all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we want to bring that same concept to subnets, where as a developer, you really don't have to focus on the hardware. And so with permissionless subnets moving forward in Avalanche, you're not going to have to worry about spinning up your own subnet. There's going to be a whole marketplace of hardware operators who that's what they're good at, is
Mm-hmm.
spinning up hardware and operating it. So we're going to be connecting developers with hardware operators via this subnet mechanism. And that's like super powerful.
Yeah, that's it's very, very cool. Um, yeah, especially when like positioned like that, that makes a lot of sense. It's super, super exciting. And you guys really approached this. In crypto, there's like a luxury and a problem in that like this stuff happens kind of so quick and dirty sometimes that the fundamentals and the foundation of like the business don't necessarily come to the forefront until either it has to or too late. Now, this can be like a blessing, right? Because you can be like really quick to market and better conditions, raise a lot of money. But then there's a lot of other problems that come from this. And in the, let's say, Web 2 world, in the traditional startup world, everything is kind of under a bright light from day one. There's a lot more regulation, a lot more experience, a lot more analysis, and everything's kind of under a microscope. And you guys, I think, have approached this in a way that looks a lot more like a traditional startup, which is good because this is a real business. And you guys have amassed a collection of like really, really strong investors, I think, that correlate to that approach. And so one of the things I wanted to ask about is when you went out and you were speaking with investors and you were raising money, what was like the general impression of the investors? Was there a lot of convincing that you had to do? Did they really get it? Was there parallels in other ecosystems that sort of helped grease the skids here? What was like the general consensus among the people that were your earliest supporters?
I think this is another thing that we were very unique in compared to other kind of crypto protocols. I think when a crypto startup goes off to raise funds, they talk to 10 investors, close a $6 million seed round, sell off half their token supply. And it turns out the investors were 3AC and FTX. For us, we definitely talked to those groups as well. But for us, I spoke to, I think it was 87 funds in about a month, maybe a month and a half. And we really took our time to find who is here for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just kind of guiding me on that. But it's really bizarre if you go into a fundraising call and then 5 minutes after you hop off the call, somebody messages you, or that person messages you and says, "Hey, we're in for 1.5." It's like, dude, you don't even know me. I don't even know you. Like you said, you don't know much about Avalanche. Like, how is this? There's some other game getting played here,
Yeah.
and we're going to be on the short end of the stick. That's just definitely the vibe I got from a lot of the actors. So one of the virtues of kind of taking the time and putting in the work, honestly, and talking to these many funds is it became very obvious what the positive signals are. So people like Framework, first investors into Chainlink Synthetics, do IDX, like these institutions, like you think of DeFi, it's like DeFi is built off of these people. And Framework was right there at the ground floor, helping rallying the troops for Synthetics and Urine and all this type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a very crisp, clear idea around what subnets are, why are they like this, and why is it so unique, and why is it that, like, just by process of elimination, if you're a large game, because gaming is kind of the next huge users of subnets and housing institutions as well, but if you're a large institution or a large game, where do you deploy? Like, are you going to deploy on a supernet where you can't go higher than 100 validator nodes and where the chain is getting reorged every 15 minutes, but you're also Call of Duty and you're releasing a mini game, like a mobile game that's Call of Duty branded? Like, you're not going to give that type of experience to your users. And again, like the subnet infrastructure, like they saw that very, very clear. They had the foresight as well. Same for Coin Fund. Republic has been one of the, I think they were one of the in the first round of checks pre-ICO in the private sale for Avalanche and Ava Labs. So they've been involved since day one. Coin Fund has been extremely involved as well. So I think when you say what reactions did you get, I think 50% of the reactions I got were, here, take our money quick before you like talk to more people. Then 33% of reactions were like, why Subnet? They're more critical, but they're like kind of like, why Subnets? Why not Cosmos? Why not something else? Or we got a lot of questions about, cool, you'll build GoGoPool. We're excited because that means you can now fork GoGoPool and deploy it on every other alt L1 ever. And we're like, no, what? That makes no sense.
And we were raising money as the market was crashing.
Yes.
So it's like really bad timing.
Like as we were kind of getting the final cap table lined up, I think you remember this, Mark.
I do.
But it was like the crash happened, right? The UST collapse happened, and then we're like sitting there negotiating and getting the last people in and like making final decisions and final cuts. Crazy stuff. So I think, again, like in the preface, like in the intro of this, I said, biggest lesson I've learned is know who your partners are and really make sure that they know who you are as well, and make sure everyone's aligned and in it for the right reasons. And I'm pretty proud of our round, that the remainder of, after all the cruft and whatever, it's like we settled on, for every person who accepted into the round, I turned away 3 to 5 investors. One, very, very lucky that we're very blessed that we're in that position to begin with. But 2, it was very much intentional, of like Framework, Coin Fund, Republic, like FinTech Collective, Avalanche. These people are going to be the institutions in the next market cycle that everyone's going to be looking towards.
Yeah, you are lucky, and but I also think there's something to be said for like building something worth investing in, regardless of market conditions, right? That's not just so dependent on like the last price of Bitcoin, or whatever the case is. I mean, crypto's wild, and there's plenty of trash, but there are very serious investors and people really concerned with getting the right people in place and moving everything forward. And I think you guys are like a testament to that, right? Because you raised during a tremendously difficult time when other projects weren't able to or went under. And again, this is all character building stuff. I think that's going to show up in the fabric of what you guys are building, right?
And quickly, one proof point of that to any to the educated audience out there, or to the audience that wants to get educated, take a look at your favorite crypto protocols and count up how many of these investors are hedge funds. And then you can go look at, okay, now how did that protocol operate? Like when you have hedge funds as your cap table and they're your board of advisors, the one giving you advice, you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis. Like your timeline is day-to-day, maybe week to week, right? But because this is how the fabric of hedge funds, this is how they operate.
Yeah.
No, they're not. They're playing their own game, and there's stuff that they're doing that's unique and like cool. They fulfill a utility. But I think where it gets muddied is when hedge funds play as venture capital, or when founders are looking for actual VCs, people who are on a 4 to 10 year time horizon for their funds, looking for returns on a 4 to 10 years. It's a very, very different game. And I think that's where like we had that talk about the future of fundraising in Berkeley for the Avalanche House. And like I remember we talked about it there as well, but just to the audience out there that's looking to get educated, like just take a look, go look around at these cap tables and see how many of these people are kind of hedge funds and how many are not, and at what stage. And having a hedge fund filled cap table really makes a lot of sense, especially if you're a DeFi protocol. Like if you're in finance, I'd want Wintermute on my side. But if you're like us and you're building infrastructure and you're building developer tooling and you're trying to make app chains really, really easy to build up, like when an app chain comes on board to use an infrastructure, they're looking for a 1 to 5 year long partner minimum. Totally different mindset. Totally different.
And I think it would be like remiss not to talk a little bit about like Ava Labs and the work that you've done with them and meeting them and expressing your vision about this and like their reception. I mean, how has that how has that been? How did that go? Like, was Ava Labs like really receptive to what you were working on and wanting to support it? Was there anything that was like surprised you? I'm just kind of curious again, so sort of for kind of like behind the curtain thing, which I think these kind of talks can be really useful for what that looked like.
So Avalabs was extremely supportive. When I came into kind of the Avalanche ecosystem, started meeting people, like Mark, you were the very first person. It was like I reached out to one of your mods, and then he set up the Calendly, and it's like, okay, now we're talking. Then the second person I talked to, you introduced me to Dane Clean, and
Mhm.
Daniel Clean is the one of the BD reps at Avalabs. He does tremendous work. I mean, the whole team does. The whole BD team is killer. But yeah, so I mean, we talked to Avalabs starting, I guess I can't say day one, but literally day two, right? Like
Right.
day one was talking to Avalanche Mark, day two was going with Avalabs or talking to Avalabs. And they're the ones that made the introduction to Framework, and they're the ones who helped set up some other investor intros as well. So, they've been extremely supportive. And even, I don't know, I feel like if you're if you're really trying to develop something non-trivial Avalanche ecosystem, like it'd behoove you to talk to Avalabs at least once a week,
For
right?
sure.
And I think earlier this day I just got off a call with them, and yeah, it's a great working relationship. And I think the really nice thing about Ava is they're the most incentive aligned partner I've ever had. Like it's crazy. Out of it's such a beautiful thing, right? Like Ava Labs' only purpose is to digitize the world's assets, and their vehicle or means of doing that is through subnets. Like let's make subnets really flexible, really easy to use, so that we can now tokenize the world's assets. And we feel the exact same way. So I've never ever had a call with Ava where it's combative or where they're thinking, oh, this thing is, like we're always perfectly aligned. When we talk about partners to make sure you're well aligned,
Mhm.
it's they're an awesome partner for sure.
Mhm. That's really cool to hear, man. Like I don't know, that's a cool story, and I just like I love you. I love like being reminded of that stuff. It's like makes all that stuff worth it. I think.
For sure.
Um,
It's funny because at the Avalanche dev team, like a lot of other L1s set out to build like a blockchain. I'm going to
Yeah.
build Dogecoin, or I'm going to build a blockchain. These guys, they don't even want to build a blockchain. You know what I mean? They wanted to build the tools to let
Yeah.
other people build blockchains.
mhm.
They only built the blockchains because they had to just show people how to do
Case
it.
study.
But they
Yeah.
want to get out of the business of building blockchains because they're at a level below that, which
Mhm.
is amazing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about protocols that may look like this in other ecosystems and how it kind of diverges because of um, the subnet architecture. So there's things like Rocket Pool on Ethereum, other like liquid staking protocols. Like how much of that inspired what you guys were doing, and then like how greatly have you had to diverge from this stuff? And it's cool if it's sort of a more technical answer to support the differences between, let's say, Ethereum and its layer twos and Avalanche and its subnets, because naturally they're going to be functionally very different, although there's some overlapping concepts, right?
Yeah. John, mind if I give like a quick overview and then you can give like a paragraph about like the technical differences?
Sure.
So I think one fundamental difference, or that when we go back to the like, why are we doing this? I think so far, liquid staking has been only built as a DeFi tool. We're approaching it fundamentally differently, and with partners, but we're approaching it fundamentally differently. And we think liquid staking is going to be an amazing infrastructure primitive.
Yeah.
So that's one very. It's like a sum it up in like a sentence or two, but it dictates everything that we do. And so, yeah, people should check out Rocket Pool in terms of like technically, very first, like that I forked my very first try was forking Rocket Pool and just try to get to work on Avalanche, which quickly fell apart because there's some big differences that John could talk about. But that was the very first inspiration, and especially the community of Rocket Pool, huge inspiration. They were like when I got into Rocket Pool, or I was getting more deeply into crypto and spending most of my day just I've never been like obsessed with tokens and cryptocurrency, like the prices
Mhm.
or whatever, but the RPL token and the RPL community, I think, is top 3 community in crypto. It's so healthy and so freaking awesome. It's an inspiration. And I think on Avalanche, frankly, the standard needs to be higher. It's like things like that can exist on Avalanche as well, but they don't. Why? And I think it's because there's no someone who's in it for the right reasons with the right partners to create the right ecosystem and the right partners get involved. And I think we can be that person for sure. And we really, like, in our bones, like, the standard needs to be higher, frankly, on Avalanche. And we'll work to maintain a high standard and keep raising it. So yeah, the people should definitely check out GoGoPool and Lido. At its core, like, the technology can look similar, and I think we borrow some of the technical concepts, but we had to definitely change a pretty good amount. Like, went through 6-9 months of refactoring to get it to work of how we think subnets are going to go. Because this is really at its core, it's a permission protocol built for subnets, help subnets go burr. So John, over to you.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of just nuts and bolts, nitty gritty technical differences about how the chains handle staking, delegation, lockup periods, how they pay rewards. Everything is different. So we had to just kind of start from scratch from that perspective. So we knew kind of the goal was a RocketPool-esque type thing. So we started from the bottom. What does Avalanche provide that we can work with, and kind of built up towards that. We love the community aspects. We want to be a community protocol. A challenge with Avalanche is it just moves so quick. So we've gone through tons of changes just in the last 6 months with the actual protocol. So we have to always stay on top of that, try to skate where the puck's going, and build features that will be enabled by the protocol. So what we come out with when we launch is definitely not the end of the road. Avalanche is going to improve the way staking works from a fundamental level. So you won't have to lock up your tokens for a specific period of time anymore. So we're going to be right there with them, adjusting our protocol to best take advantage of what Avalanche provides.
Yeah, it makes sense, and yeah, it moves fast, and it's also early, right? So things naturally change quickly, and you do have both of these two things happening at the same time. And I think what's also interesting about what you guys are building is it has to largely be predictive. Like, you guys have to try and anticipate the way these subnet economies will come together, the way users need to be incentivized, the way people are going to be using this stuff. And that's challenging, but I also think that the first people to build this stuff will also inform, the way that people end up using it, because this is the scaffolding, that's available, right? So I think it's kind of like, hopefully, right, self-fulfilling in that way. I believe it will be, at least for a time, until it isn't, and then you guys will, adjust, right?
And on that, real quick, also, I think key thing to note as well, or just to, like, highlight on, because it's so important. When John says we, he doesn't mean us, like the starting dev team, like our 6 developers, and he also doesn't even mean like the Ava Labs team. He really means we as a community, like all the developers in the ecosystem. So if you're someone watching this and you're a developer, you're looking for, okay, how do I get started? Like, where can I go to learn about these changes, get caught up to speed about, okay, what's getting shipped? Because every new change that's shipped, that's another opportunity, right? That's the crypto mindset. Is that in change is where all the opportunity is. If something is static, it's like, okay, there's going to be 15 different forks just deployed within like a month. But I think, so the change is definitely very exciting, but it's much bigger than just us. So hopefully we're able to engage kind of the right developers to work with us and work with this in a very kind of more permissionless context, much more decentralized context, to again raise the standard of what communities can and should be on Avalanche. But definitely reach out if you're keen to learn more and kind of get caught up to speed about what we know about what's the Ava roadmap on the protocol level. What does that mean for us? It's for staking and for subnets. Like, always very happy to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think, people kind of sort of rightly, I guess, assume like a lot of this work has to be done in direct, in conjunction with Ava Labs, and like there's probably part of that it is true, but there's teams like you guys that are picking up on this work and taking it in your own directions, that have a lot of experience, a lot of valuable perspective. Maybe in the same way that Avalanche has this perspective around kind of early stage and tokenomics and these kinds of things. Like, protocols and projects like yours will have this technical perspective, having gone through it, walked through it, and seen a lot of others do it. And I think there's so much value in that. I think it's just important to recognize. And You know, if I had to reduce GoGoPool down to just kind of two components for the sake of simplicity, you have node operators and you have stakers, right? And the node operators we kind of covered. The stakers, right, are not necessarily concerned with running the hardware in the same way that a node operator is. So maybe you could talk about these two groups, how that like user flow looks, and how the economies of these two groups might be a little different.
Totally. So again, GoGoPool is a permissionless staking protocol built for Avalanche subnets, starting by lowering the cost of nodes by 1,000 AVAX. So as a staking protocol, there are two main users. There's a node operator. So like you said, that's a person who's actually running their own node. It's non-custodial. So you own your node, you keep your keys, you deposit 1,000 AVAX, and you stake GGP token to collateralize what you'll be borrowing, to a minimum 10%. But the more you stake GGP, the more GGP rewards you'll earn. And then you get matched with another 1,000 AVAX. The node gets launched as a fresh validator node. Again, you retain control, you retain ownership, so you can do whatever you want with the hardware. And you earn in three different ways. So you earn staking rewards from your 1,000 AVAX that you've staked. You earn a 15% at launch commission off of the 1,000 that's matched to. So you keep 15% of the rewards as a node operator commission. And you earn monthly GGP rewards as well, depending on how much GGP tokens you stake. The more GGP you earn, the more you can restake. The more you restake, the more nodes you can start running, and the more AVAX can get matched to you. And this is one area we're going to be playing with, kind of going forward. The future of the protocol is, what does it mean to restake GGP? Does that also give you access to the validator node marketplace? Does that give you access to a decentralized participate in a decentralized DevNet, get compensated for it? Does that help you participate in different kind of utility subnets that, through the magic of Avalanche Warp messaging, production like institutional subnets will want to tap into, and you can get compensated for that? So there's a lot of interesting ideas to play there, and that's the first user. It's a validator node operator. You run your own hardware, stake 1,000 AVAX, stake GGP tokens. You earn AVAX GGP in rewards. For the other side is a liquid staking user. So the minimum staking amount is 0.01 AVAX minimum stake. You don't need any technical knowledge to do this. All you do is you swap AVAX for GG AVAX, which is our liquid staking token. And this GG AVAX token accumulates rewards. The rewards are streamed out to it evenly over time, so that now you can use this GG AVAX token as you would use AVAX. You can hold it, and as you hold it, it'll just keep generating rewards for it. You can swap it back, exit your position with AVAX. You can spend it in DeFi. You can put up an Aave for collateral, all this type of good stuff. And for liquid stakers, their big value prop is, okay, I'm staking my AVAX. And two things. One, I stake my AVAX knowing that every AVAX I stake is directly going to help support a subnet get off the ground. It directly goes to hardware. We're not delegating on top of other already existing nodes, especially not delegating on like whales. This is to further decentralization of the network and create a marketplace of hardware, so that when a subnet comes along, they can click a few buttons, and again, subnets won't have to worry about the hardware. So by staking with GoGoPool, you are definitely helping out the future of Avalanche and helping subnets ship faster. The second benefit you have is I get to stake AVAX, and I can earn the rewards in real time, but now I remain liquid. So I can move this token around and put it in DeFi and do whatever I want instantly. And I can just exit my position if there's liquidity in our deposit pool or on like a Trader Joe liquidity book position as well. You can do LPs and all sorts of ways they can earn with GG AVAX, just like how you would with AVAX.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. That makes a lot of sense. It's a cool system, and I like how there's just more passive components to it. It makes a lot of sense to me. With the Avalanche IDO specifically, I want to talk a little bit about that, and I also want to talk a little bit about the GPP token itself, because these things are kind of tied together. And so with the Avalanche IDO, we're approaching this a little differently, and this is maybe the V1 sort of version of starting to support these subnet networks and economies early, right? So the first kind of layer of it. And what that looks like is, at least for right now, is starting to place a larger emphasis on the validator round, not sacrificing the staking round, because these are potential validators in the future, right? And I think good community, which sort of goes back to your point earlier, but a larger emphasis on the validator round, because it is the validators who really need this token, right? It's a very firm utility inside of a validator's framework. And so, could you talk a little bit about the token and why we're favoring validators here, and why a validator might want to participate in the event?
Yeah. So for validator nodes, the value prop is pretty clear. It's buy GGP token, stake it, and I can launch new nodes and then start playing with this node. And you can participate in governance and also participate with like in our actual roadmap. So everything is ultra transparent with us. So you'll be able to see in Discord, like, okay, here are the 3 subnets that need hardware. Which one do I want to help with? At first, it'll very likely start off manual, especially for validator nodes that already have hardware. These will be more just participate in Discord, and like we can start matchmaking subnets to validator nodes. And we've already done that. But going forward, this is where kind of V2 the protocol and also a bunch of Web2 tooling or Web2 based, like more traditional SaaS tooling can help with to start building out this validator marketplace. So I think for validator node operators, buy a GGP token so you can run more nodes and become more appealing to work with different subnets. And I think also over time, you'll see all the awesome updates that'll be coming out, and you'll have a direct say and be able to give direct feedback of run some specialized hardware tooling or participate with a subnet, talk to subnets directly. You'll be able to have a direct impact on where this is going, because this is very much, in my mind, this is very much a 6, 12, 18-month game. This is not a NFT drop where it's here one week, gone the next, or like what's the new flavor of the month. This is much more of these subnets are looking for partners. They really are. And as promotion subnets start getting off the ground as well, that's when they can start getting more interesting. But at least in the beginning, I think as a validator operator, there's a lot of opportunity to get involved with subnets earlier than you ever thought you could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I just kind of want to reiterate, right? Like, we are still doing a staking round, we're doing a validator round. It's just that, at this point, the token is really for validators. And so we're just kind of placing a slightly higher emphasis on this. At some point in the future as Avalanche, we're going to be deploying some new features that work much differently, right, than an IDO might, because the demands and needs are different to bootstrap a network. But like, obviously, this is where you're going, this is where we're going, this is where the ecosystem is going. And so, as a kind of a first step, right, I think it does make sense. And like, the IDO is like just right around the corner here. And so, what is the roadmap? Like, what are you guys focusing on in terms of your development and the roadmap for immediately after the IDO to be like ready, or just kind of absorb, hey, we're now live out in the market?
Yeah, so in terms of roadmap, we think of it in 3 different buckets. There's the protocol for validator node or node operators. How can make this really, really appealing to node operators and new utilities, new features. Second is how to make the liquid staking token very viable as well, create integrations and make partnerships, etc. And then the third is for subnets. How do we make this really, really viable for subnets to use in a more permissionless way, in a decentralized first way? So as soon as the IDO closes, the protocol is launched, TGE happens, and it's ready to be used right away. And then I think one interesting call out is that the way the rewards work for GGP is that there's a set amount of rewards every month, and depending on how much GGP you stake, you get a percentage allocation of the rewards. So if you're one of the early people, if there's only, say, on average, if there's 20 node operators for the first month, and then now there's 200 node operators for the second month, those 20 people split the pool of rewards. So now, on average, each person is getting much more tokens for the rewards versus when you go into the second month, now there's 200 people. Now 200 people are splitting out the rewards. So I think being early has its merits here. Just in terms of if you're a person who's deeply convicted about subnets and you really want to get involved, it's like I think like the way that Avalanche is going, I think that's subnets of the future. But I think there's merit to coming in early, engaging with the team, asking questions, and getting involved in running hardware pretty early on, because that'll just give you a unique position going forward to help out subnets as much as possible. But yeah, in terms of roadmap, the protocol is going to launch as soon as the IDO closes or as soon as the public sale closes. And then we'll have an announcement at the summit as well about kind of what the next tooling for subnets. This will be more subnet focused tooling to make it really easy for subnets to kind of get started and launch. And then shortly after that, it'll be about creating integrations, and using kind of GGP, I think, can become a pretty powerful part of that, where we can create integrations between the subnet tooling as well as these mini pools or these validator nodes that get launched. And then going forward, I think that's where more of the roadmap will focus on, as well as providing updates to the core protocol.
Cool. Like this leads into my next question about just longer term development, and without asking necessarily about like specifics, right? We've talked about how quickly this stuff is evolving, and it's a moving target, and skating where the puck is going, and these kinds of things. And so a roadmap is like, I guess, with something like this, two-part, right? You have where you're planning to execute, and then how you guys think about being kind of nimble enough to keep up, right? And so maybe you could talk about like the strategy for like the next, let's just say, year. Like, how do you think about it or conceptualize it?
So the end state, if we think of 12 months, we're going to go embark on a 12-month sprint. I think the end state is concrete, which is make mini pools or make these validator nodes on the GoGoPool the most viable property ever out of like any network. Just make that just so much better than any other option you have, that being a hardware operator is becoming, well, it'll be like being a doctor or being a lawyer in the US, where it's like a very coveted position to be a validator node, and very useful as well. And so we want to maximize that. The second thing we want to maximize is TVL on the liquid staking token, and make sure that liquid staking token is useful both for subnets as well as in DeFi, as well as wherever Avalanche is going. And third, it's for subnet operators. Let's make this thing as useful as possible for subnet operators. So these are the three goals of GoGoPool and the foundation and what we're doing. Now, you bring up a really good point, which is, okay, that's the 12-month goal, but every 3 months in crypto, it seems like it's a revolving door of brand new protocols go kaput, brand new protocols come up, and like the landscape is just reinvented every 3 months. Maybe it's more like every 2 months recently. And I think for us, the key is in the community, where having an open dialogue and just really working with as much of the community as possible of, hey, Steven's having all these meetings with like Ava Labs, other hardware providers, Cosmos app chains, like here's whatever, just communicating all that really effectively back to the community, just as much as possible, so that we can let everybody play the game. Because again, like to make Web3 scale, it's going to take subnets being really easy and really powerful. And to make that really easy, really powerful, that's just too much of a challenge for just Ava Labs or just GoGoPool, or even just Ava plus GoGoPool plus Avalanche. It's going to take everybody. And everybody brings their own unique skill sets. And I think that's the beauty of crypto, is that cryptocurrency now gives a way to coordinate people in a very permissionless way. And I think that's what gets us all extremely excited. So when I talk about raising the standard about the community, like I really mean it. I think community should be run very differently. But I think ours will. And it's going to turn out to be uniquely viable over the next 12 months by having this rapid iteration cycle with the community, very transparent, getting the right people engaged on things with actual skill sets, so we can actually execute and deliver on things, and just consistently reevaluating, okay, what tactically, like the end goal is there, but now tactically, all right, 2 months has happened and Coinbase has been banned from the US. What's that mean for us? Tactically, we're going to have to figure that out and just keep iterating and spend as much time doing as possible.
But one thing I will say about execution is, in Web 2, when I was running dev teams, the mantra is always ship as early as humanly possible, right? Just get it out. But with crypto, obviously, we're going to ship as soon as it's safe. Safety is job number one for what we're doing. So anything that touches a smart contract is going to be slower That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But we do have a lot of Web 2 type products we're working on as well. Those can iterate much faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting perspective. I think the last question I have here, and it's I think more of a general one, but kind of like a good place to end. I think, and I'd like to kind of understand from both of you how you think about this. Just generally speaking, like how do you kind of see the subnet economy and the way people use these things unfolding? And one of the things like I wonder about, particularly as it relates to GoGoPool, is permissionless subnets, right? And networks from day one, which will eventually happen, that want to galvanize and organize a totally permissionless, decentralized group of validators. It's like I think we're taking these very reasonable, logical first steps where the people who are bravest around this by just wanting a subnet, right? They want some predictability around the network and the security and the reliability. It makes sense, right? But naturally, as that stuff stabilizes, you have the people who are more adventurous that want that fully, that fully decentralized network that like maybe they never even touch. Who knows, right? I'm just kind of curious how you guys see this stuff just happening over time.
Well, this kind of comes back to Avalanche developers being really focused on building the Lego blocks.
Yeah.
So if you think about subnets, right, you're not going to have one size fits all. You're not going to have, there's going to be groups that want to own every validator and just tightly control everything that happens. They can totally do that. There's going to be other people that don't ever want to think about hardware and they just want to deploy their game or their app on the most relevant place, wherever that happens to be. So there's going to be a whole host of people that spin up like mini AWSs or mini DigitalOceans, right? So they're going to have their own subnet with their own, and the subnets will be competing against each other to get apps to deploy on their subnet because, oh, we provide you with, A, B, and C functionality. You get this built-in bridge. Oh, we have USDC on our chain or whatever it is. Like there's going to be an explosion of people competing at the subnet level, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's cool. Stephen, you have any thoughts on that?
I guess my thoughts are always around timelines and timing, right? Well, I think harkening back to kind of why we got so red-pilled on subnets is because if you're right now, all the venture scale teams are building on subnets, and teams who want to get to venture scale, they want to experiment with, but maybe it's untenable for XYZ reasons that GoGoPool is here to solve, and our community is here to solve. And I think in terms of timelines for people, I think the common question is when will Elastic Subnet ship? When will there be 150 different subnets that are live that I can like click on and play with and do whatever? And I think marrying that question with what John just said, I think there's going to be so many subnets that people won't necessarily be interested in because it's like we look at SK Global, if they're launching on a subnet, what's the current Avalanche community going to do on that subnet? It's like, I don't know, it's like Korean loyalty points is what they're using it for. So how will the community get involved with this? And that's totally up to the subnet provider. I think what we're focused on, if Ava is doing a really awesome job at closing these really big deals, like really blue chip, which has to happen because the trust needs to be there and grow in Avalanche. And that happens by closing people like TSM, GRI, KKR, SK Global, like, all these people. And then what we're focused on is just like as easy as like 3 devs can get together, get an idea and build Aave, right? If this was 2017, 2018, like that's what happened. You don't need to be kind of like a super well-funded blue chip enterprise. And that's what we're focused on helping as well. So that these people can ship faster, get more frequent iterations. So we talk about like one Elastic subnets or one subnets. I still think it's a 6 to 18 month game we're playing. And that's why I think it's so important right now to get the right community in place and set up the right scaling so that as we head into the next market cycle, and in every single market cycle in crypto, you see like developer interest 100 X's, right? In each kind of crypto market cycle. And that's how crypto really grows as we go through these cycles. And it's a graph kind of like this. So what we're pretty focused on is setting up the right fundamental ingredients with the kind of the right bits and pieces of the community, with the right dash of decentralization, with the right kind of Web2 tooling as well. So that heading into the next market cycle, that's when everything will make sense. I think that's when people are going to be like, oh shit, right. All of a sudden, Avalanche is now an overnight success, right? And then, but us builders will be like, yep, we've been working on it for like 18 months now.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. I know you guys are excited for it. We're excited for it. Well, I really appreciate you guys like taking the time to come on here and talk and kind of go deep about the project and about the process, which I always like to try and like at least get a little into, because I just think it's super interesting and not something that gets talked a lot about in crypto, especially at the level of like token sales and marketing. Like, you guys are real people working on real things, and I think that's as important as anything else. So really appreciate you coming on here and being open with us. We're super, super excited about this IDO. It's been a long time coming. So it's really nice to finally see this all come together and actually be happening. So, just really appreciate you guys, appreciate the work that you're doing. And we'll be sure to do it again soon, right? Whenever we need to, right after the IDO, it's just like, doesn't stop here. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when people see I think it will take some time for people to like really understand and figure out like, okay, this thing is live now. Let's play with it. But I think once people figure it out, I think faces will get melted off, of like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be an amazing accelerant, and super excited. Thanks, Mark, for inviting the two of us and letting us ramble, and kind of like working with us and being an awesome partner for the past 18 months now. It's awesome.
And whoever's listening, feel free to come to our Discord and hang out.
Yeah.
We'd love to see you.
Yeah,
Totally.
for sure. Well, it's been a pleasure, guys. It's a real pleasure to work with y'all. If you're interested in learning more, follow Twitter, go to the Discord. These guys are super, super active, super, super open and friendly. So I would definitely encourage anyone that's curious to just join the community and see where it takes you. All right, guys. Well, have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again soon.